again. Now we go to organizational legitimacy and feminist organizing. The case of women-led urban community association, Barangay Tatalon, Quezon City, Philippines, presented by Ervin Grana.
Okay, thank you so much. Next slide, please. Yes, so I decided to just clarify, I decided to change the title of the study, Engendering Legitimacy, the case study of a women-led urban community-based organization in Barangay Tatalon, Quezon City, Philippines. So, next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, so thank you so much. So this research narrates the story of PLM, or the Tatalon chapter of the Pinakaisang Lakas ng Mamamayan, a women-led urban poor community-based organization reaching an on-site / in-city housing campaign in Barangay Tatalon, a flood-prone village located in the 4th district of Quezon City. Now, PLM was established on August 12, 2018, and they have achieved success in organizing self-help community initiatives such as the Kusina Bayan, a series of community kitchens implemented before and during the COVID-19 pandemic. Next slide, please. Now, prior to the 2022 Philippine General Election, PLM expanded to 70 chapters. Next slide, please. Then in June 2022 onwards, the organization continued its expansion to a housing campaign that consisted of the following procedure. Prospective members wrote letters expressing their interest in applying for housing. These letters were addressed to QC Mayor Jordan Monte herself and were submitted to the Quezon City Housing Community Development and Resettlement Department, or QCHCDRD. Afterwards, they were given a stub containing a reference number and a link to the registration form. Upon accomplishing the form, their application would be included in the QCHCDRD's database. However, they would only become members of PLM after submitting Xerox copies of their letters and stubs to the organization's leaders. Those who submitted were included in a list of housing applicants, which leaders would present during dialogues with the QCHCDRD. Now, this was their way of committing to PLM's struggle for decent, affordable, and pro-people on-site housing. Next slide, please. Now, the recruitment during next slide, please. Now, the recruitment during this period happened so fast. Moreover, during this time, PLM's leaders began engaging in dialogues with the QCHCDRD. Now, PLM is composed of around 800 members, most of whom are nanays. Yet maintaining the support of their members is itself a tremendous challenge. How did leaders like Serena and Julius accomplish this despite all the hurdles and constraints they faced? So this brings us to the concept of the sociological concept of organizational legitimacy. Now the definition is quite long. Next slide, please. But for now, we may think of the concept as being synonymous with leader support. Now I use this concept to address two research questions. Next slide, please. How do leaders of urban poor, next slide, please. How do leaders of urban poor, women-led community-based organizations establish organizational legitimacy in conditions of structural disadvantage and deprivation? Next slide, please. And in so doing, how do they produce inter-organizational hierarchies? Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Sorry. Now, through a combination of interview ethnographic data, which I analyzed through demand analysis, I explored these questions by next slide, please. Locating the intersections of power, legitimation, and gender. And my findings show that power manifests in ways that increase the unpaid community work of female community leaders, but they also show how some community leaders adopt organizing strategies insensitive to the conditions of female leaders and members who are likewise noted in burden. Next slide, please. Now, I present these findings by describing leader strategies that each correspond to distinct aspects of PLM's legitimacy. So the first is their response to the Quezon City local government's housing program and their efforts. And the second refers to their efforts in addressing state-led rent tagging And the third, or the last, refers to their informal practice of prioritizing active members in their organization's list of housing applicants. Whereas the last strategy describes dynamics to an internal to an organization, the first two describes leader strategies born out of structural conditions. Let's explain these in a while. So next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay. So the first strategy outlined in the table I showed previously refers to PLM's housing campaign, which was the response to the QCLG's housing program. It is important that we situate this housing campaign within the broader political and economic milieu of democratization and neoliberalism. Gary Shantin argues that this milieu can de-radicalize urban poor CBOs because opportunities for political participation influence their leaders into cooperating with local authorities so that they can meet their members' particularistic demands for community improvement. So we can observe this in the housing campaign that PNM adopted in June 2022, which was PNM's leaders' attempt to secure their organization's position in the QCHC housing project. Now, this is not a critique of their campaign and studies. I am merely emphasizing the need to situate it within broader structural conditions that gave it its shape. Now, another effect of these structural conditions that scholars like Hayden Shelby note is that it has shifted the responsibility of addressing PNM's members' claims to housing to community leaders like Ervin and Juin who are multiply burdened. PNM's housing campaign from June 2022 onwards consisted of two informal requirements that members of the QCHC-DRD requested that the organization fulfill. That leaders identify a vacant lot in Tatalon which the QC-DRD can use to construct a high-rise condominium, and that the lot must be owned by the National Housing Authority. Now, these requirements had the effect of increasing their burdens, but entailed a lot of walking. Next slide. Next slide. Wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah. So, and for more than 6 months, they spent some Sundays walking around Tatalon, finding vacant lots. In fact, some of the areas they mentioned in the quotes, Santo Domingo, Victor, and Banahaw are some distance from another. So walking from Santo Domingo all the way to Banahaw, for instance, would take approximately 30 minutes. Okay, next slide, please. I would just like to emphasize this quote. Sometimes my daughter, according to Nana Juin, sometimes my daughter tells me, where did you come from? Why come home just now? So they did this at least twice every month for 6 months. And when they located, next slide, please. And when they located a lot which they proposed to members of the QCAC-DRD, they were met with disinterest. For instance, rather than giving them legal support to identify the status of the lot which they identified, members were advised to occupy it. Now, the QCHC-DRD's neglect thus affected PLM's pragmatic legitimacy. Next slide, please. Which is an assessment of the organization's goals, practices, and structures aligned with immediate self-interest of their members. So a consistent theme in the interviews was that, next slide please, was that respondents joined the organization to fulfill their aspirations for housing. However, other members expressed sentiments, next slide please. Other members expressed sentiments that threatened PLM's pragmatic legitimacy. Here we see, next slide please. Here we see, for instance, in this quote, next slide please. Sorry, that would be slides. Okay. How here we see how pragmatic legitimacy can be threatened by the failure of local authorities to respond to the claims of marginalized sectors. Okay, next slide please. So the second set of strategies pertains to PLM's efforts at addressing state-led breadcrumbing, a form of violence, next slide please. A form of violence that government forces use to fabricate the involvement of civilians in the province insurgency and thereby justify the use of force against them. Now, this strategy is indicative of broader structural trends of democratic erosion that have contributed to the shrinking of civic space in the Philippines. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. So in fact, the Payatas chapter of PLM was read down last year. So there was this pressure for leaders to establish or emphasize their legality. And this is an important of regulative legitimacy, a form of legitimacy constructed on the basis of an organization's adherence to the law. Now, due to time constraints, I cannot discuss the paralegal training that is organized, but I would like to talk about inside these. One strategy that jurists in Australia adopted, which was to apply for accreditation. Yet this process was mired in bureaucracy. Jurists in Australia were contracted back and forth again and again from Tatalon's Barangay hall to the QCC hall just to accomplish and submit requirements. and other requirements also kept Serena in jurisdiction until midnight. Now, their case illustrates how navigating bureaucracies can be a uniquely gendered activity, for it imposes demands on women who are already multiply burdened. Next slide, please. So the last strategy I would like to talk about is their strategy. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide. That produce moral hierarchies. Next slide, please. The moral hierarchies within Tatalon. So just very quickly, what principles of feminist organizing value organizing strategies that construct hierarchies and distribute voice. Serena designed an informal criteria to differentially assign priority to members in the life of housing. So members had to attend mobilizations and participate in meetings, for instance. And abide by this criteria meant increasing one's chances of obtaining priority against physical housing applicants. While many agreed with this system by invoking the value of hard work, some disagreed because this criteria was insensitive to their circumstances as families. And this reflects gender tensions that arise when CDOs build moral legitimacy, or legitimacy born out of an assessment that the organization's activities align with social norms and values. Next slide. So lastly, next slide, please. Next slide, please. So to conclude, the study foregrounds an approach to local housing that imposes strategic gender needs of women in urban poor communities. Rather than increasing their burdens, local housing policies should provide opportunities for structural change and should be sensitive to their conditions. And lastly, these findings show principles of feminist organizing can contribute to legitimacy building in the long run because they provide avenues for members to participate in decision making and represent their interests and concerns. So thank you so much for this question.
Thank you, Ervin, for Ervin. I'll be sharing my reaction to your presentation. Also, we decided I can do it. Also because the title of the research really covered, and someone also did research on urban for housing, focusing particularly on organized women's responses. So, ang daming points of similarity with the findings. In terms of describing how women really work to secure adequate housing. Yung mga dinadaanan qualifying for the program, speaking to the program, supporting the housing options, and so on. And even securing the kinds of housing that they feel they deserve, that they really deserve. Sobrang trabaho talaga din sa life of the research. And ang feeling ko talaga, research works like this are important because they serve to illustrate how much work they can do, this time in the context of the community, to enjoy something there in the first place, and I can do it. So, and I hope that we will be able to share this with more organizations, and really share this with organizations work with, because maybe those category findings that they could do better, do something. And I hope this would inform them where they improve, and then also maybe in the future if you want to also do these steps that or on those who were successful in securing adequate housing and currently I'm sorry it comes out this way, but it would also be very interesting if you could enrich our understanding of how urban community organizations experience or are able to attain sustained legitimacy. Kasi nag-write down that it's quality of life that they want to achieve for themselves and their community. And sadly, also service in their finding because they find it possibility obviously that's talaga. And yun, hopefully din, ibigay natin, ipasa natin sa mga nag-organize. Diba? Kasi there's lots of details that can be used when it comes to combating organizers, and even in analyzing how organizations themselves. And also sana nga basa sa mga policy makers kung pwede yung posible kung makakamalig sila. Hopefully. And yun lang from me. Thank you very much for doing that research, and thank you for presenting. So much.